Today I'm going to combine the two things that I suck at: sculpting clay and painting miniatures. And of course, it's going to be Resident Evil related. Duh. Let's sculpt and paint Lisa Trevor. Let's start with the tools and material that I will be using in this video. First, I'm going to be using Reynolds wrap or tinfoil. Next is some armature wire, which is actually floral wire from the dollar store. A few dotting tools. A silicone sculpting tool, which is the tool I used the most by far. A pair of needle nose pliers. I've had these for 20 years. A box cutter. Next, some original Sculpey clay. I got this at Walmart for $8 or something like that. It's white and very nice. Really Sculpey. A bunch of cheap acrylic paint. And finally, my drill. Speaking of my drill, we're going to start with it. Now check this out. I always get a kick out of that trick. This floor wire is way too weak on its own, but when you put two strands together and give it a spin with my drill, now it's 2 times stronger. I'm taking my newly spun wire and twisting it into 2 circle shapes. This will be the body of the miniature. Next, I added a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, because even a monster has those body parts. Next, it's tinfoil time. I am wrapping the whole armature wire with tinfoil to create the basic shape of the little miniature. I'm doing this to save on clay because it ain't cheap, and I don't want the miniature to be too heavy. After covering the body, I made a garbage glob of tinfoil for the head. I did the same for the eyeball on her back. Now that may sound strange, but Resident Evil fans will understand it. I also added a piece of wire to the eyeball so it could attach to the armature wire underneath all that tinfoil. This will ensure that the eyeball doesn't fall off before I could smother it with clay. Speaking of clay, it's time for clay. Let's knead some up. But be careful because sometimes clay can be sharp. Jokes aside, I have no idea how I got cut here. It must have been the armature wire. But hey, for you blood fans, here's some blood. Please hit that subscribe button to see more blood. We are finally ready to lay some clay. Now this is just going to be a base layer of clay. I'm not going to worry about any details just yet. I just want to cover all the tinfoil and the armature wire. Detailing will come later. Well, you look at that. I actually got blood in the clay. Now this miniature truly has my blood, sweat, and tears. Please push that like button, won't you? Okay, just about done laying the base clay. As you can see, I did not put any tinfoil on the arms and legs. I chose not to because I was afraid that they would be too thick. In hindsight, I think I made the right choice, because they turned out alright in the end. But I would say that it was kind of hard to cover just the wire, because the wire kept wanting to blast out of the clay every time I touched it. Okay, the base layer of clay is done. We're going to switch to detailing this little cutie pie. Oh, tricked ya. I'm going to actually sculpt the face first. I'm using a dotting tool to sculpt out the eye sockets. Then I'm using a toothpick to sculpt out the teeth. Then I took the same toothpick and jabbed at it in my lazy attempt to create more detail in the face. But I could hardly be blamed for my lackluster efforts since her face is covered anyway. As you watch past rebuilds attach the face to the body, let's talk about Lisa Trevor. She is a terrific monster, but also a great character from Resident Evil Remake. Now, I'm not going to get into her life story in this video. You'll have to look it up, or better, play Resident Evil Remake. I just wanted to share my feelings about this special RE monster. That's right, here comes a simp rant for not only a fandom waifu, but a barefoot waifu, as the anime weebs would say. When I first played Remake all those years ago, it was completely new to me. I didn't play the original Resident Evil game on the PlayStation. Why would I? Remake is not only one of the best RE games, but one of the greatest games of all time. And I believe Lisa Trevor is a big part of why it is. Being a writer myself, her story is written so well, and the way the game builds up to her reveal is just perfect. When you touch the gates under the stairs and hear her moans, or when Barry warns you about her over the radio, basically telling you that whatever the heck you were about to encounter was going to wreck you, and not in a good way. When it was finally time to meet Lisa, I dreaded going up to her cabin, mostly because I wasn't at all prepared for what was up there, not mentally, physically, or in terms of resources. When I first played Remake, I was terrible at saving my game, ammo, and herbs, but never mind my poor resource management skills. The point is, I was terrified, and I'm not the type of person who is easily scared. Games in general never outright scare me, but this got me scared, and it was all because it was so perfectly built up through the early parts of the game. When I finally did sum up the courage to go in that cabin, I met Lisa Trevor for the first time, and oh boy, did I run. I was in panic mode and unskilled, so she got a hit on me, and I was left limping for my life through the dark forest. That was basically my first encounter with Lisa, and I've loved this huggable mess ever since that day. So of course, she was going to be featured on this channel. She deserves to be in the spotlight, even though it's quite difficult to actually look at her. Without peeing your pants, that is. Okay, simp rant over. Let's get back to my huggable mess. Quick side note, if anybody's curious, I was later killed by the crows, which I'm quite embarrassed to admit if I'm being honest. Alright, where were we? Alright, her head. With her skull firmly attached to her body, I'm going to work on her lower jaw. I rolled out a clay snake, then attached it to her lower skull. I'm being quite messy here because it really doesn't matter, because once again, it's going to be covered. Then I blended the clay snake as best I could. Oh, her jaw is a little crooked. I'll fix it. There you go. Then I brought the toothpick back and carved in her bottom teeth and added a few other details with it. After I finished with her head, I moved on to adding some more clay to beef out her back, because she's kind of a hunchback, just like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I don't remember what his name was. I haven't watched that movie in a long time. I want to say Frodo, but somehow I think that's wrong. That sounds like Lord of the Rings to me, which is quite funny actually. I can't remember the name of the Hunchback from Notre Dame, a movie I have seen, but I can remember the character from Lord of the Rings, which I've never seen in my life. When I was finally happy with her size, I could now move on to the more finer details. I started with the spooky eyeball on her back. I rolled out a clay snake, and I fiddled with it with my fingers and the sculpting tool until it resembled an eyelid. I have to say, the eye came out really good, and that gave me a lot of confidence. So I just went for one of the things that were kind of scary about building or sculpting Lisa Trevor, and it was her hands, or more exact, her fingers. I did those next. I cut little clay snakes into tiny little sausages, then I blended them on her cute little nubs. I did all 5 fingers, including the pinky, because Lisa Trevor is a character from Resident Evil and not The Simpsons. And I really liked how her hands came out. They were very nice, and a load off my mind. I did the exact same thing for her feet as well. After I was finished with her limbs, I just added a few more details. I concentrated mostly on her back, because I didn't want the eye on her back to stand out too much. I wanted to add some detail around it, like skin texture and her exposed spine. These details don't quite show up yet, but they will when we get to the painting and weathering stage. I baked her according to instructions, and now finally I can say I have a lumpy figure of a vague suggestion of Lisa Trevor. Alright kiddos, this is the part of the video where it's going to get really creepy, because we now have to sculpt her, I guess you call them skin masks? Her skin mask? It's very creepy. so I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to refer to it as her hat. Skin hat. Well, I guess that sounds worse. We're just going to call it her hat, okay? I'm switching to a different clay for this. I'm going to use this beige colors of Super Sculpey. I'm doing this because it's already the perfect skin color, and that means I don't have to paint it. I took my blade and I cut a chunk out of it to a size that I liked, and then I'm using this dotting tool to make the eye holes and mouth holes. How creepy did that sound? If you're not aware why Lisa Trevor wears what she wears, I'm not going to tell you or explain it. You're going to have to either Google it or, better yet, go play Resident Evil Remake. Next, I'm taking just a tiny bit of clay, no bigger than one of my tears, and I'm going to use that to make the nose. Then I'm going to take my handy dandy silicone sculpting tool and blend it into the face, because clearly Lisa Trevor's hat needs a nose. After buttering up the figure with some tacky glue, I'm going to attach our newly quote-unquote hat to our marshmallow, and then I'm going to take a toothpick and create some texture just on the edges. Now these details once again won't show up until later in the painting and weathering stage. And there we have it. We have one creepy quote-unquote hat done. Because it was so much fun to do, let's make a second one. But instead of a face, let's make an ear. I cut out another piece of the flat clay, and then I took a ball and stuck it on there, and then used my silicone sculpting tool again to try to blend it into the skin, and gave it my best shot to make it look like an ear. But I have to say, it did come out pretty good. I was happy with it. So I went ahead and glued it to the figure, and I have to say she's getting a lot scarier each time I look at her. Here I'm adding the last few pieces of her skin hat, including her second face, which oddly enough is on her back. And voila, she is done. Her hat and mask skin thing is fully done. Now you're probably asking yourself right now, is he gonna do the tentacles? Well, no, I'm not gonna do the tentacles. Why? Because this is a YouTube video, not a hentai. And if you don't know what a hentai is, good for you. Okay, she's all baked up, and now it is time to cool her off with a nice paint bath. I mixed together a red and white, then I realized it was way too red, so I added a bunch of white to it, and I have to say it came out pretty alright. Being a novice at painting, alright is exactly what I was shooting for. With the base done, I moved on to her eyeball. I painted it a nice pussy yellow, and then I did the same for her littler eye. My goal was to make it as gross as possible, and I think I achieved that perfectly. And if you didn't believe me, just wait until you see what I did next. I used a red apple and painted just the outer rim of the eye to make it nice and infected. And then I took a dotting tool with some black paint on it and made the pupil. At this point, I realized that she was quite in the nude, so let's put some clothes on her. I'm starting out by spilling Mod Podge all over myself, wiping it up real quick with a paper towel. Then I'm taking some water and dripping it in the Mod Podge to water it down. We need a very, very loose mixture for the clothing we're about to make. Then I'm taking a piece of tissue paper and soaking it in the watered down Mod Podge. This is a very neat trick you can use to make some quick and dirty clothes for miniatures. The best way I could think of making her clothing was to do it in stages. I of course started with her skirt, and then I did her top part. The toothpick was really helpful for this. And there we go, she's fully clothed. After waiting a full 24 hours for the Mod Podge to dry, I mixed together a gray and a blue and painted her dress. I have to say, once I painted her dress, she really started to look like the monster in chains. And it looked like I didn't blow it, but we still have the weathering stage, and I could blow it there, so let's not get too excited. Speaking of weathering, I'm going to stumble into it right now. I'm going to make 3 washes, a black, a yellow, and a red. If you didn't know what a wash was, it's just painting with really watered down paint. I'm going to start with the black, and I'm going to cover the whole model with it. This black wash is acting like a dirty and grimy coat on the figure. It was obvious that Lisa Trevor hasn't bathed in like 30 years, and this black wash will really showcase that. Next is the yellow wash, and I'm only applying it to her skin hat. Why? Well, it's exactly what you think. I'm attempting to rottify, if that's a word, the skin. Make it look rotten, because once again, it's been on her for a while. After I was done with the yellow wash, which came out scary good, I switched to the red wash, which I'm only applying this to her back. I only applied it there because I wanted to emphasize how gross her back is. Okay, weathering stage is complete, and look at that, I didn't blow it. There's only 2 things left to do before we can roll the beauty shots. The first thing I'm doing is going to put this chain around her. Now, she can't be the monster in chains if she doesn't have chains. So I'm taking this old necklace chain and wrapping it around her ankles, using super glue to make sure they stay wrapped. And then I'm going to take the same chain and wrap her arms as well. And after a bunch of super glue, which I mostly got out all over my fingers, she is now the monster in chains. Now I know what you guys are thinking. She doesn't have chains around her wrists. She has that wooden thing that I can't remember the name of. Yes, she does. And the only rebuttal I have is, it's my toy and my video, so I can do whatever I want, and you can't stop me. So she has chains around her wrists. Accept it. The last thing I'm going to do is use this nail polish, this top coat, glossy top coat. I'm only going to apply this to her eyeball. I wanted to make it nice and shiny. This will make the eye really pop. And with that, I can finally say, let's roll the beauty shots. Hey guys and gals, thanks for sticking around with me for the whole video. I really appreciate it. And I really had fun with this, and I really hope you had fun watching me sculpt Lisa Trevor. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I'm not a very good sculptor, or at least I don't have a lot of experience in sculpting. I think I've sculpted 2 other things before I sculpted Lisa Trevor, and she came out far better than I ever would have imagined. And my confidence definitely grew from doing this. The fear of sculpting, I think, is the biggest thing that I got over. I don't have to be afraid of it anymore. And I will definitely be sculpting more things, maybe on this channel as well. If you like this video, give it a like, and if you're a Resident Evil fan, why don't you hit that subscribe button as well? Really helps out the channel, and if you're a nice person, you can leave a very nice comment, but only if you're nice. Expect more Resident Evil crafting in the future, and some other crafting as well. Okay guys, I gotta go. Later. Oh, and remember, be kind and rewind.